Bedford Purley Wood is in the Nene Valley in Cambridgeshire, about 15 miles from Peterborough. 1800 years ago, this was one of the wealthiest areas of Roman Britain, and our site would have been on the outskirts of Dura Breve, the main trading centre in the region. But while most Roman sites around here have been damaged by modern ploughing, it looks like whatever's hidden in these woods could be really well preserved. Our challenge is simple enough. What were the Romans doing here? But thanks to the trees, finding out isn't going to be that easy. It's a nightmare for geophys. As you can see, we've strimmed a lot of the open areas, but we can't strim them all because the other problem is this is a national nature reserve and there's lots of protected plants here. John, you having a good day?
Wonderful.
For once, though, we don't have to wait for geophys, because in some places we can actually see Roman walls on the surface.
Look, this is silly. You can't have archaeology it's sticking above the ground. Yeah. It's not under the ground.
No doubt this is why the site was first discovered by an antiquarian back in the early 1800s. And it's because the remains are close to the surface that they've also shown up so well on this LiDAR picture. The colours, by the way, represent height, with green marking the low ground and white the highest. And we know that some of these buildings are Roman because a few test pits have been dug. But not enough to work out what was actually going on here. So we're opening these two trenches to try and solve the mystery.
This trench here is an extension of the test pit to see more of what's left of the Romans. So look at the condition of the Roman remains. This one is right at the other end of the site to see if it's the same type of structure down there.
It's great to see the trenches started so soon, especially for the local archaeologist who invited us here and is perplexed by this site.
I mean, the first thing is, it appears to be huge from the LiDAR. Yeah. I mean, it's a massive site, isn't it? But there's a fairly distinct range of what appear to be buildings running roughly north-south here. And you can possibly spot individual rooms within them. And then there's a probable courtyard out here. And then there's a whole load of pockmarked these pits here, these quarry pits from the ironworking industry that we know was in this area.
All right, then, at first glance, what do you reckon it might be?
Oh, is it a massive villa? Is it a massive industrial complex? Is it a military complex?
Or all of those.
Or all of them.
Or all of them.
And then there's the ironwork, as you said, all the pitting around it as well.
Well, if anyone can sort it out, my money's on Phil, who's now extending Ben's test pit and opening up a much bigger trench. This should give us a far better chance of working out what type of buildings we have here. We've also got this detailed plan of the earthworks drawn when the test pits were dug, but I'm not sure it's any help to us. There's a huge mismatch between the neatness of that map and what I can see on the ground. But look at that. Is that an earthwork, or is it part of this root system, or just a tumble of stones or something? I can't see any buildings here at all. Phil, are you sure we're digging in the right place?
What do you mean we're digging in the right place?
Well, look at that. Lovely and neat. Look at that. Chaos.
I don't actually regard that as extremely chaotic. Come and have a look.
Sorry, there's a rather large archaeologist in my eye line.
Look, we've got a nice long straight row here. It's all built of stone, and look, we've even got one stone on top of another stone. Now then, what would you call that?
It's a wall.
Thank you.
I eat my words.
Join a thriving worldwide community of Time Team fans on Patreon.
Our new target is to reach 15,000 worldwide supporters on Patreon by the end of 2025. This will enable us to continue expanding the Time Team world with more digs and greater access than ever before.
It's the afternoon of day one here at Piercebridge in County Durham, where we're getting to grips with what we think might be the remains of 3 Roman bridges in the River Tees. But while most of us have our eyes firmly fixed on what's happening on the riverbeds down here, over here, what looks like a breakaway faction of rebel archaeologists appears to be opening a trench in a field that, even more bizarrely, is nowhere near the river.
So, John, where are we on this geophys then?
I think we've got a little rectangular building here.
Yeah.
It's on a different alignment to the fort. So we're going from the middle, across the wall, possible ditch outside.
Yeah.
I have two big questions about this site. Firstly, why are we excavating this little field when the river's actually about 200 metres in that direction? But secondly, and probably more importantly, what on earth is Mick Aston doing here? Mick wasn't scheduled to be on this dig. Ben's in charge, not you.
Yep.
You don't like Roman archaeology, and yet you wheedled your way into it.
Yeah, well, it's because it's County Durham and it's the Tees Valley. And we've done quite a lot of sites in this area already. And I'm interested in where this fits in to the overall picture, because we're very near Stanwick, which is a big prehistoric complex. And we're in the Tees Valley, where we've got Gainford and Barnard Castle from the medieval period.
Do you see that, John? The reason he's here has got nothing to do with the Romans at all. He's interested because of what might have preceded the Romans and what came after them.
Yeah.
But Ben, you're interested in the Romans.
Definitely interested in the Romans, yeah. And the reason why we're here is because there's been a lot of excavation around Piercebridge. Wonderful tome here, you know, you just feel the weight of it, a huge amount of excavation. But it's all taken place over there to the east. Loads of buildings, some sort of village-like settlement over there, but no one's actually been over here on the west side. Have we got a small village just contained over there? Or have we got something much larger, something like a small town?
Mick, do you think whatever we find here might help us illuminate what's going on down at the river?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, this has never been looked at. So...
Well, it has been now.
Except for this morning with you, Dean. Yeah, but, so we don't know what's here, really.
Well, we do. We're starting to get a really exciting picture, I think. We've surveyed it magnetically. You can see the corner of the fort. It shows really clearly. And then we've got a mass of anomalies extending across the field.
Do you think all this here might be human activity rather than just geology?
I'm sure it is. When you look at the detail, some of the ditches are on the same alignment as the fort, but others are clearly on a differing alignment. What I think we may have is an earlier settlement, and that the fort has been slapped on top of it.
We've opened our first two trenches here to try and find a building and a road next to the fort. If we can establish how the Roman settlement developed, that should help us work out the story of the bridges. And if we're going to do that, getting dates will be vital. On dry land, that means finding bits of pottery or coins. Down in the river, though, we're reliant on dendrochronology or tree ring dating. And if you've ever tried sawing wood underwater, you'll appreciate that's not quite so easy.
If you'd like to see more episodes like this, you can make it happen.
Our new target is to reach 15,000 worldwide supporters on Patreon by the end of 2025. This will enable us to continue expanding the Time Team world. Enjoy front row seats for the greatest show on Earth and under it.
When the Romans came here, they were looking for somewhere to which they could dominate the landscape, somewhere close to guard a river crossing. And what they found here was absolutely ideal, because two sides of it are actually almost at a right angle. They got two sides of a Roman fort ready-made for them.
This fort at Drumlanrig is positioned at the junction of three Roman roads and is ideally located to guard a fording point on the River Nith.
We know from aerial photography that there's a temporary Roman camp in this field down below us here. You can't see it now because the conditions are not right. And there's a big marching camp in that field on the other side of the river. What that tells us is that it must have been a fording point in this river here, this camp either side of it. So you can see how there's almost like a clustering of Roman activity around this point.
Having looked at the maps, Stuart knows this has been a fording point since the 1700s, and it may be the actual crossing point used by the Roman army.
It's such a good choice of location that would have been the same for all different periods, from the early forts right through to the later forts.
So is that why you think that there was this continual phasing of fort activity on that
That's
side?
right. There was no need to move. This was a critical place in the domination of this valley to be able to control where they crossed the river.
In Roman terms, this was a small fort, probably housing something like 600 soldiers. Although some of them may have been outposted to man one of the very small fortlets, like this one at Durrisdeer, just half a day's march away. With so many Roman soldiers around, it's surprising that this is the first coin we've found.
The size tells me straight away it's Roman small change from the 1st or 2nd centuries.
Right.
But it's a little bit smaller than the 1st century ones, so for my money it's going to fit with that Antonine date pottery we've had off the side. So it's going to be probably 130s, 140s, 150s. I guess that's what it's going to be. But the key thing is, where did it come from, Matt?
Well, we're getting underneath this demolition there, and it's just onto this floor surface, just lying on the floor surface here.
Right, so it's going to date the destruction above that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can I ask you about this now, Phil?
Yeah, I think you can, Mick.
You've calmed down a bit, have you?
Not at all. You see, it does pay for you to go away.
Well, absolutely, yeah, because it looks good, doesn't it?
Well, it does. I mean, I don't think there's any question about it. I'm slap bang in the middle of the headquarters building.
I mean, that looks like a really good hard floor you've got there.
It is. We've got this wonderful pink mortar floor.
In fact, we're finding evidence of the same mortar floor in both of these trenches across the headquarters building.
Yeah, well, you can see this label 513. It's exactly the same floor surface as Phil's got.
Right, so what, is that a foundation trench you've got there?
No, this isn't the foundation trench for this stone at all.
This big stone is thought to be a step, one of the few that's left in situ.
But sat on that is this floor here, and below it is another floor layer.
Is this our two forts? I mean, it looks like the 513 layer and my floor could be the second fort.
Yep.
And that 515 layer could be the early fort.
Yeah. So that's our first glimpse, actually, in the bottom of that hole of what's going on under all this lot, isn't it?
It just gives you an idea of the potential of this site, doesn't it? It's awesome. It really is.
We're
awesome.
only just going to tickle the surface, aren't we? What time we got
That's
left?
right.
Join Time Team on Patreon to access exclusive 3D models, masterclasses, and behind-the-scenes insights.